everyone. Welcome back to another video on ANC's channel. My name is Archana and today we're going to be talking about GRE Verbal. Dun 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 dun. Truly the most feared section in the GRE. But not to worry, I've got all the secrets to help you achieve your maximum possible score. Let's get started. It's important to understand that GRE Verbal is really easy if you have a good vocabulary, but memorizing the meanings of over 1,000 words over your preparation is actually boring. Try using some of these tips to make the process more enjoyable. You can learn the word in such a way that you probably won't forget it. This is actually a really good example because you associate a certain image in your head to the word, and whenever you see the word, you'll think of the image. You could learn the etymology, you could associate the meaning with your senses, you could learn the synonyms and antonyms, and you can learn the word using a crazy sentence. Today, I'll be discussing the way I learned GRE words with a fair few examples, and I know it's really effective. Let's get started. Word number 1 is enervate. The meaning of enervate is to deprive of force or strength. A synonym for it is to exhaust a person. The antonym is to invigorate. You're so full of energy. The etymology is E, which means out of, plus nervous, which literally means you're sinew. Now, a sentence that you can use to remember enervate is the enervating heat of the sun can hardly be avoided in the desert, right? So look at this picture. This guy seems so tired of the heat. He looks super enervated, right? Okay, moving on to the next word. Prevaricate. Prevaricate means to speak in an evasive way. A synonym of prevaricate is to be vague or equivocate. An antonym is to affirm. Prevaricate comes from the Latin word prevaricat, which means to walk crookedly. A sentence you can use to remember prevaricate is, during the hearing, the witness was willing to prevaricate in order to protect his friend. Okay, so whenever you look at the word prevaricate, you should remember a court scene and a witness willing to speak or bend the truth a little bit so that his friend is protected. Moving on to the next word. Upbraid. Upbraid means to scold. A synonym for upbraid is to chide, and an antonym is congratulate. The etymology is from Old English. Braid meant brandish. A sentence you can use to remember upbraid is actually a really crazy one. What is the first thing you think of when you see the word upbraid? You see the part braid, right? So that immediately conjures an image in my mind, at least, of a little girl with two braids that are all sticking up. Okay, so she upbraided the little girl firmly for her crazy pigtails. Look at this picture. You probably won't forget this word anymore. Moving on to the next word. Gregarious. Gregarious is an adjective, and it means to be likely to socialize with others. A synonym is social, an antonym is reserved. It is derived from the Latin gregarious, where greg means a flock. The way I remember this word is I split it into two things. So I have Greg and I have Gary, and they're two gregarious people and always make new friends. And that's a sentence that I use to remember this word. Moving on to the next one. Extant. Extant means to still be in existence. A synonym for it is surviving. An antonym means non-existent. The etymology of extant is that it's derived from a Latin word, extant, meaning visible or prominent. A sentence that I use to remember extant is only one copy of Cavendish's book is still extant. So that means there's only one copy of the book still in existence. Moving on to the next word, chastise. It means to reprimand harshly. A synonym would be to scold or upbraid. Remember upbraid from a few slides ago? Yes, a synonym for chastise is upbraid. An antonym would be to praise. Chastise is derived from the Middle English verb taste. A sentence you can use to remember chastise is, the teacher often chastised her students for being unattentive in class. And I'm sure we've all been through this in our school days. Look at that picture. I'm sure we can all relate. Moving on to the next word, egregious. It means shockingly bad. Synonym is dreadful, and antonym is marvelous. Egregious is derived from Latin, which means to stand out from the flock. A sentence, you can see that the word abuses of copyright were observed. So that means there were outrageously bad abuses of the copyright that were seen. Moving on to the next word, gargantuan. Gargantuan means enormous, gigantic, just huge. An antonym is tiny, minuscule, right? Etymology is from Gargantua, which is the name of a voracious giant in Rabelais' book. A sentence you can use to remember is, she has a gargantuan appetite. For me, especially being a foodie, this is something I can definitely remember. Look at those pancakes. Moving on to the next word, recant. It means to formally reject or disavow from a previously held belief. A synonym is to renounce, and an antonym is to reaffirm. The etymology is from the Latin recantere, which means to revoke, from re, expressing reversal, plus cantere, which means to sing or chant. A sentence you can use to remember this is, he is compelled to recant under the pressure from the Pope. Look at the picture. He is compelled to recant under the pressure from the Pope. Okay, moving on to the next word. It means trenchant. It means having keenness and forcefulness and penetration in thought. A synonym is cutting, or you could even use sharp. An antonym is vague. It is derived from an old French word which literally means cutting. A sentence you can use to remember is, the paper makes trenchant criticisms of the government. So how I remember this word is trenchant. Well, it's actually pronounced trenchant, but you can remember trench and you can remember this word, like a really deep, sharp trench, and you'll remember this word, trenchant. The next word is cant. The meaning of cant is a hypocritical or sanctimonious talk. Oh wow, big words there. But basically, it means a talk that is typically of a moral, religious, or political nature that is not really sincere, right? A synonym is pretense, and an antonym is sincerity. It's derived from the early 16th century Latin cantare, which means sing. So I haven't written a sentence over here, and the reason is because I wanted to talk about the picture. So if, for example, you have a kettle and a big pot, so if the pot is judging the kettle on how to cook things or something like that, the kettle can obviously talk about how the pot isn't really good for certain food items either. So it would be hypocritical of the pot to judge the kettle. Parsimonious is the next word. Parsimonious means extremely frugal. A synonym is miserly and an antonym is extravagant. There wasn't really an etymology that was good for this word, so I have not mentioned it here. A sentence with parsimonious is Katie is so parsimonious that she only buys a pair of socks if all of her other socks have holes in them. Another example is, I'm sure you've all experienced this, but when you use a toothpaste tube, you start to roll up the tube from the back so that you can use the maximum amount of toothpaste. Okay, moving on to the next word, vindicate. Vindicate means to clear of accusation, blame, suspicion, or doubt with proof. A synonym is clear of all charges. An antonym means to convict. It is derived from the Latin vindicat, which means claimed or avenged. A sentence with the word vindicate is, Harry Potter was vindicated by the Ministry of Magic. With the help of Dumbledore, of course, for those of you who get the reference. Moving on to the next word, galvanize. Okay, it means to excite or inspire someone to action. A synonym is stir, an antonym is demotivate. The etymology is that galvanize is derived from the French galvanizer, which means to stimulate by electricity. The sentence is, he was galvanized into action due to the constant support from his friends. So you can imagine a running race where a person who's at the end and is almost ready to give up starts to hear his friends saying, come on, you can do it, you can do this thing. And he's galvanized into action and he actually ends up finishing the race. Okay, moving on to the next word, frugal. Now, a couple of slides ago, we saw a word called parsimonious, and frugal is pretty much the synonym of parsimonious. It means not spending much money, but spending it wisely. So it's actually a little bit different from miserly, but it still conveys an overall same meaning. A synonym is parsimonious, and an antonym is lavish or extravagant. Frugal derives from the Latin word frugalis, from frugi, which means to be economical or thrifty. A sentence you can use to remember is Monte was no miser, but was simply frugal. Again, you can use the toothpaste analogy to remember this. Another word is censure. Censure means to express strong disapproval. A synonym for censure is chastise. An antonym is to praise. It is probably derived from the Latin censura, which means judgment or assessment. A sentence you can use to remember this is that the company was heavily censured by inspectors from the Department of Trade. Okay, moving on to the next word, acrimony. Acrimony means bitterness and ill will. A synonym for it is rancor, and an antonym is goodwill. Etymology is that it is derived from both French and Latin words meaning bitter. A sentence you can use to remember this is, the acrimony between the president and the vice president sent a bad signal to the voters. You can also use coffee to remember this. For some reason, I use coffee to remember this because coffee has a bitter taste without adding sugar and milk and all of that. Just like plain good old black coffee has a very bitter taste. And I use that to remember acrimony for some reason, if that helps you guys. Betray. The meaning of betray is to reveal or make something known, usually unintentionally. A synonym is to divulge, and an antonym is to conceal. A sentence with betray is, she drew a deep breath that betrayed her indignation. You could basically think that when you betray someone, you break their trust in a way. Moving on to the next word, amenable. Amenable means easily persuaded. A synonym is compliant and an antonym is resistant. The sentence with amenable is, Shirley was generally amenable, and so her brother was able to persuade her to go camping. I love being compliant. I love being amenable. Moving on to the next word is profligate. Profligate means spending resources recklessly or wastefully. A synonym for profligate is lavish and an antonym is frugal. It's probably derived from the Latin profligatus, which means dissolute. A sentence is, the actor was so profligate that his house has foreign marble floors. Look at that fancy bathroom. The first word for today is maintain. Maintain is a verb which means to assert. A synonym for maintain is uphold and an antonym is abandon. It is derived from an old French word or from the Latin word which means hold in the hand. A sentence you can use is, the spy maintained that he was not a trespasser and the whole situation was an accident. Moving on to the next word. Amorphous. Amorphous is an adjective which means shapeless. A synonym for it is indefinite and an antonym is definite. It is derived from an old Greek word which is morphe, which refers to the form, and refers to without. A sentence is, her study plan for GRE was amorphous. Moving on to the next word. Qualify. Qualify is a verb which means to make less severe or to limit a statement. A synonym for it is limited and an antonym is unguarded. A sentence you can use is, his good characteristics always qualify his errors. So basically, because he had these good characteristics, even though he would make errors, the errors would seem less severe. The next word is restive. Restive is an adjective which means restless. A synonym for restive is fidgety and an antonym is calm. It is derived from an old French word restif or from the old Latin restere, which means to remain. A sentence is, the crowd had been waiting for hours and many were becoming restive. Moving on to the next word. Ambiguous. Ambiguous is an adjective. It means open to more than one interpretation. A synonym for this is equivocal and an antonym is clear. It is derived from Latin ambiguous, which means doubtful. Ambiguous phrases are annoying and cause fights to break out. So basically, ambiguous means unclear and different people may interpret the meanings in different ways. Moving on to the next word. Laconic. Laconic is an adjective which means describing a person's speech or style of writing using a very few words. A synonym for laconic is concise and an antonym is loquacious. It is derived from the Greek words because the Spartans were known for their terse speech. A sentence is, the Spartans were often laconic. They believed in the less is more ideology. The next word is ambivalent. It means mixed or conflicting emotions about something. A synonym is equivocal and an antonym is clear. It is derived from the German word ambivalence. A sentence is, Sam was ambivalent about studying for the exam. Moving on to the next word. Castigate. Castigate means to reprimand harshly. A synonym for it is chastise and an antonym is praise. The etymology is that it is derived from a Latin word, castigare, which means to reprove, and from castus, which means chaste or pure. A sentence is, drill sergeants are known to castigate their new recruits. Moving on to the next word. Venality. Venality is a noun. It means the condition of being susceptible to bribes. A synonym for venality is corruptible, and an antonym is honest. A sentence is, even the higher posts in the government are not immune to venality. The next word is harangue. Harangue refers to a long, pompous speech or a tirade. A synonym for it is a lecture, and an antonym is panegyric. The etymology is from an old French word or a medieval Latin word, or it can also be of Germanic origin. We're not really sure about this. A sentence is, Billy's harangue about the meringue annoyed the guests at dinner. For those of you who don't know, meringue is this sort of dessert. Moving on to the next word, wanting. Wanting is an adjective which means lacking. A synonym for it is deficient and an antonym is sufficient. Sentence, she did not think that her wanting for pizza would only increase the longer she was on her diet. Moving on to the next word, veracious. Veracious means truthful. A synonym is honest and an antonym is dishonest. It is derived from the Latin word which means true. A sentence is, we hope that our leaders only utter veracious statements. Moving on to the next word, criterion. Criterion means the ideal in terms of which something can be judged. A synonym for it is a basis. It is derived from the Greek word criterion, which means means of judging. A sentence is, they award a green label to products that meet certain environmental criteria. Moving on to the next word, heterogeneous. Heterogeneous means consisting of elements not of the same kind or nature. The most common example for this is sand. Sand is made up of particles of different shapes, sizes, and colors. So it is heterogeneous in nature. A synonym is diverse and an antonym is homogeneous. It is derived from the Greek or Latin word which means other kind. Sentence, the mixture containing different chemicals was heterogeneous in nature. Moving on to the next word, aversion. Aversion means a feeling of intense dislike. A synonym for it is hate and an antonym for it is to like. It is derived from the Latin word which means turn away from. A sentence is, I have an aversion to the smell of meat being cooked. Moving on to the next word, inhibition. Inhibition means the action of forbidding. A synonym is hindrance and an antonym is encouragement. It is derived from the Latin word inhibere, which means to inhibit. Sentence is, she was inhibited from entering the area as it was deemed unsafe. Moving on to the next word, vitriolic. Vitriolic means harsh or corrosive tone. A synonym for it is bitter and an antonym is pleasant. A sentence is, there have been many vitriolic attacks on politicians. Moving on to the next word, vacillate. It means to be undecided about something. A synonym is unsure and an antonym is sure. A sentence is, I vacillated between teaching and journalism. You can also remember that vacillate sounds like oscillate, which means to swing back and forth. Moving on to the next word, divulge. Divulge means make known to public information previously kept secret. So basically what that means is you betray a secret. An antonym for it is conceal. Etymology is from the Latin word which means widely publish. A sentence that can be used is, she was known to divulge any information shared with her to the rest of her friends. Moving on to the next word, privation. It means the act of depriving someone of basic rights, food, or money. A synonym is deprivation and an antonym is luxury. It is derived from the Latin word which means deprived. A sentence that can be used is, years of rationing and privation led to a diminished community. Moving on to the next word. Hello everyone. Welcome back to part 3 of GRE Verbal. Vocabulary Building on ANC's channel. My name is Archana and today I'll be taking you all to the next set of words. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, make sure to go watch those before you watch part 3. Let's go to the first word, machismo. Machismo is a noun which means exaggerated masculinity. A synonym for it is macho and an antonym is effeminate. It is derived from Mexican Spanish, from macho, which means male, and from the Latin masculus. A sentence is, the exaggerated machismo displayed in the tango is funny. For those of you who don't know, tango is a sort of dance. Moving on to the next word, rustic. Rustic is an adjective which basically denotes rural life. Synonym is plain. An antonym is urban. A sentence for rustic is, the unblemished charm of rustic life has been a perennial source of inspiration for the painter. Moving on to the next word, perfunctory. Perfunctory is an adjective which means hasty and without much attention to detail. A synonym is cursory and an antonym is thorough. It is derived from late Latin, which means careless. A sentence for perfunctory is, he gave the car a perfunctory glance before he went back inside the house. Moving on to the next word, deem. Deem means keep in mind or convey as a conviction or view. A synonym for deem is adjudge and an antonym is believe. A sentence for deem is, the scolding was deemed to be necessary. The next word is incontrovertible. It means impossible to deny or disprove. A synonym for it is indisputable and an antonym is questionable. A sentence for this word is, the evidence against her was incontrovertible. Moving on to the next word, spurious. Spurious means plausible but false. A synonym for this word is fake and an antonym is real. It is derived from a Latin word, spurious, which means false. A sentence for this word is, the claims turned out to be spurious in nature. Moving on to the next word, plight. Plight means a dangerous, difficult, or unfortunate situation. A synonym for this word is predicament. A sentence for this word is, I pity their plight after the war. The next word is ascend. Ascend means travel up. A synonym for this is rise, and an antonym is descend. A sentence for this word is, she ascended the stairs. The next word is parable. Parable means a short moral story. A synonym for this is fable. A sentence for this word is, the parable of the blind man and the elephant is really nice. Moving on to the next word. Analogous. Analogous means similar or related. A synonym is comparable. An antonym is incomparable. It is derived from a Greek word which means proportionate. A sentence for this word is, they saw the relationship between a ruler and his subjects as analogous to that of father and children. Moving on to the next word, abate. Abate means to diminish in intensity. A synonym is decrease, an antonym is increase. It is derived from the old French word which means to fell. A sentence for this word is, energy efficiency may be the quickest way to abate emissions of carbon dioxide. Moving on to the next word. Aberrant. Aberrant is an adjective which means diverging from the standard type. A synonym for this is deviant, and antonym is normal. It is derived from the Latin aberrant, which means wandering away. A sentence for this word is, this somewhat aberrant behavior requires an explanation. The next word is abjure. Abjure means to reject or renounce. A synonym is forego, and antonym is affirm. It is derived from the Latin word abjurare, from ab, which means away, and jurare, which means swear. A sentence is, I have abjured all stimulants and meat. The next word is abscond. Abscond means to leave secretly or evade detection. Synonym for this is escape, and antonym is stay. It is derived from the Latin word abscondere, which means hide away from. A sentence for this word is, the barman absconded with a week's takings. Banal. Banal means boring. A synonym for this is cliché, and antonym is interesting. A sentence for this word is, songs with banal repeated words are not fun to listen to. Belie. Belie means give a false impression, intentional or unintentional, in word, appearance, or deed. A synonym is contradict, and an antonym is to agree with. The sentence for this word is, the quality of the music seems to belie the criticism. Benign. Benign is an adjective which means gentle. A synonym for this is harmless, and an antonym is harmful. It is derived from the old French or from the old Latin word which means well born. A sentence for this word is, the climate becomes more benign as we move nearer to the Black Sea. Biased. Biased means displaying partiality. A synonym for this word is prejudiced, and an antonym is unbiased. A sentence for this word is, we will not tolerate this biased media coverage. The next word is calumny. Calumny means lie. A synonym for calumny is slander, and an antonym is tell the truth. A sentence for this word is, a change in the law would prevent the press from publishing calumnies. Moving on to the next word. Candid. Candid means honest. A synonym for this word is open, and an antonym is secretive. It is derived from the Latin candidus, which means white, and subsequent early senses were pure, innocent, unbiased, free from malice, and hence frank. A sentence for this word is, candid interviews are nice to watch. Decorum. Decorum means appropriate behavior or good manners. A synonym for this word is propriety, and an antonym is impropriety. It is derived from Latin, which means seemly. A sentence for this word is, he had acted with the utmost decorum. Thank you for watching part 3 of this series. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe so that you do not miss parts 4 and 5. Thank you.
Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update.